It was just after dawn when the first wave of passengers began moving through Terminal 4 at Los Angeles International Airport. The sun was only beginning to spill its light through the tall windows, casting a pale gold sheen over the polished floor tiles. The air carried the usual scent of coffee, engine fuel, and recycled air, mingling with the faint tang of metal from the security checkpoint. TSA officer Jack Miller stood near lane 3, his stance relaxed but his eyes sharp. He'd been doing this for years, long enough to know that real danger rarely announced itself with fanfare. It crept in quietly, wrapped in normalcy. He adjusted the strap of his duty vest and gave a glance to Max, his K9 partner. The Belgian Malinois sat alert at his side, tongue flicking out between sharp breaths. Max had a presence, an intuitive edge Jack had come to trust with something close to reverence. Jack rubbed the back of his neck and exhaled slowly, scanning the faces moving through the metal detector. Families. Business travelers. Backpackers. Nothing stood out, until it did. Without warning, Max jolted up. His muscles tensed like coiled springs, ears stiff, nose twitching rapidly. Then came the bark, a sharp, cutting sound that cracked through the noise of the terminal. Not his usual alert bark. This was different. Urgent. Commanding. Jack's heart instantly jumped into high gear. He looked in the direction Max had lunged. A couple was walking through the scanner with a baby wrapped in a pale blue blanket. The woman was petite, blonde, her expression composed. The man, tall and broad-shouldered, kept one protective hand on her back. They looked calm, too calm. But Max wasn't buying it. He was straining at the leash now, barking again and again, each sound more aggressive than the last. "Max, heel!" Jack said, trying to rein him in, but the dog wasn't responding like usual. He was locked in, eyes fixed on the bundle in the woman's arms. Jack's instincts flared like a fire alarm. He approached, not running, but fast. Professional. Composed. His mind was racing, but his voice came out steady. "Sir, ma'am. I need you to stop right there," Jack said, lifting a hand. The man's brows furrowed. "Is there a problem?" "Your child," Jack said, eyes flicking to the still, silent bundle. "May I ask how old they are?" The woman didn't answer. She just tightened her grip. Jack knelt slowly, his heart hammering in his chest. Max stood beside him, growling deep in his throat, nose just inches from the infant's face. The baby didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. "Sir, ma'am," Jack said again, this time more firmly. "I'm going to need to call medical." "My son is asleep," the man said coldly, pulling the woman gently behind him. His tone was smooth, practiced. Jack didn't believe it. Not for a second. He tapped his radio. "Control, need a medic at lane 3. Immediate." The response was quick. A paramedic jogged over from the emergency station and carefully took the baby into her arms. A moment passed. Then her eyes widened. "There's no pulse. He's not breathing." Jack froze. Everything else, footsteps, chatter, the noise of the terminal, faded into silence. The world narrowed to that one sentence. His throat tightened, and he forced his hands to stay steady even as his vision tunneled. The baby wasn't alive. He looked down at Max, who had stopped growling now. The dog stood completely still, as if confirming what Jack couldn't yet fully process. Something inside Jack shifted. This wasn't about protocol anymore. It was about truth, and whatever dark current lay beneath the surface of this calm, composed couple and their unmoving child. And Max had sensed it before anyone else. Jack's fingers trembled as he clipped the radio back to his vest. He forced himself to breathe, to stay grounded in the chaos unraveling around him. His pulse thudded against his ribs like a warning drum. The medic's words still rang in his ears, no breathing, no pulse. But the infant's skin hadn't gone stiff. The limbs hadn't lost all color. Whatever was happening, it was recent. Deliberate. Controlled. "Stay with the baby," he said to the medic, voice low but firm. He turned to the couple. "I need both of you to come with me. Now." The man's jaw tensed. His eyes, cold and unreadable, flicked toward the emergency exit like he was doing the math, distance, timing, consequences. The woman clutched at the folds of her hoodie, her face finally cracking, revealing the first tremor of panic. Her fingers twitched against her thighs. Jack noticed everything. Every breath. Every silence. Every twitch. "We've already gone through security," the man said flatly. "You have no right to detain us without cause." Jack met his stare. "Your child may be in medical distress. That's more than enough cause." He didn't wait for permission. With practiced precision, Jack stepped between them and the path ahead, raising one hand to quietly signal to nearby officers. "Passenger assist at checkpoint 3, he murmured into the mic on his collar. "Potential trafficking situation. I need backup, now." Behind him, Max remained on alert, eyes fixed on the woman, nose twitching slightly. The dog didn't bark again, but the tension in his body was louder than sound. 2 TSA agents arrived, flanking Jack on either side. The man's eyes scanned them, then returned to Jack. He raised his hands slowly. "You're making a mistake." "No," Jack said, his voice steel now. "The mistake would be letting you through." He extended his hand. "Passports. Now." The woman hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out 2 American passports and a third, smaller one tucked into a leather sleeve. Jack took them, his gloved fingers brushing against the worn covers. Everything looked standard, well used, but intact. Yet as he flipped through the pages under the light of the scanner, his gut twisted. Then he saw it. Barely visible under the UV light, the lamination on the child's passport page had a ripple, subtle, but unmistakable. A fake. And not just any fake. A professional fake. Jack had seen counterfeits before, sloppy ones. This wasn't that. This was crafted. Engineered. Almost flawless. Almost. He glanced back at the couple. They were frozen now, not from fear, but calculation. They were watching him, not each other. Not the baby. Not even the paramedics. Him. "Get the FBI on site," Jack said quietly into the mic. "This just turned federal." The man exhaled slowly, and Jack could practically hear the gears turning behind his eyes. It was a cold, controlled surrender. But Jack didn't relax. Not even when the man raised his hands. Not when the woman finally lowered her eyes. Then came the scream. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a scalpel. One of the medics, pale and trembling, stepped back from the child. He's breathing now. Shallow. But alive." A jolt of something, hope, fear, adrenaline, shot through Jack's chest. The baby wasn't dead. But he had been made to seem that way. "Why? Is he sedated?" Jack asked. The medic nodded shakily. "Some kind of paralytic. Very low dose. Meant to mimic stillness." Jack clenched his jaw. This was no accident. No act of desperation from frightened parents. This was orchestrated. Cold. Clinical. He looked at Max, who was still staring at the woman, unmoving. The dog hadn't relaxed. Neither had Jack. He stepped back, drawing a slow breath, gaze sweeping the terminal like it was the first time he'd ever seen it. Because if this had slipped through once, how many others had? And who was really behind it? Jack remained frozen at the observation window, his hands clenched into fists so tightly that his knuckles whitened. The man behind the glass hadn't moved in over 10 minutes, he just sat there, unmoving, unblinking, like he was made of stone. Jack had seen his fair share of liars, smugglers, and cowards over the years, but this was something different. The stillness wasn't fear. It was calculation. His breath fogged the cold surface of the glass as he leaned forward, jaw tight. Every part of his body screamed for movement, for action, but his training forced him to watch, to wait. Inside the room, the suspect exuded a bizarre calm, almost like he was biding time for something, or someone. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this man wasn't alone in whatever this was. The tension in his chest had evolved from suspicion to something far heavier, dread. This wasn't just about a forged passport or even a paralyzed child. This felt deeper, darker, coordinated. The kind of operation that didn't get caught. That didn't make mistakes. Until now. Jack's mind flashed back to the exact moment at the security checkpoint. Max had lunged forward, not playfully, not randomly. That bark had been sharp, deliberate. Instinct. Jack had trusted that instinct more times than he could count, and Max had never been wrong. The baby had been limp, too limp. No flinching, no stirring, not even a startled blink. Jack remembered the father's voice, cold and firm. He's sleeping. No, he wasn't. Jack had known at the moment he saw the boy's waxy skin and closed eyes that didn't twitch. A chill ran down Jack's spine. He rubbed the back of his neck and turned as Agent Dana Mitchell walked in, tablet glowing in her hand, her eyes scanning lines of text with increasing concern. "It's confirmed," she said. The child was injected with a paralytic rocuronium, low dose. Enough to freeze his motor responses, but not enough to shut down organ function. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Jack cursed under his breath. "That's a surgical drug. You need clearance to get that." Dana nodded grimly. "And the passports are counterfeit. Sophisticated work. Not just a couple trying to sneak into the country. Someone funded this." Jack's stare returned to the interrogation room. "This isn't the end of the line," he muttered. "This is just one link in a chain." He straightened up and turned toward the exit. "We're not just dealing with human trafficking. We're dealing with medical professionals. People with access. Infrastructure. And if they're smuggling sedated kids like cargo, then there's no telling how deep this goes." Dana stepped aside to let him pass. "Where are you going?" Jack paused at the door. "To follow the chain. Before it disappears again." As he stepped out, Max trotted beside him, alert, ears perked, as if he, too, understood they had just scratched the surface of something far more sinister than either of them had expected. As Jack stepped deeper into the dimly lit warehouse, every instinct screamed that something wasn't right. The sliding metal door behind him creaked shut, muffling the outside world in a final, almost ceremonial silence. It wasn't just quiet, it was sterile, calculated, as if the building itself was complicit in the horrors it concealed. The chill in the air gnawed at the back of his neck, and each footstep echoed with a tension that made his shoulders tighten. Max, his canine partner, moved ahead cautiously, ears alert, nose low to the ground. His fur bristled. Jack gripped his flashlight tighter, letting its beam sweep across the room. What he saw wasn't chaos, it was order. Disturbingly precise. Crates were stacked in immaculate rows, each labeled with coded stickers and barcodes, medical acronyms Jack recognized from his years of experience. Biohazard warnings. Surgical equipment. Cold storage. But it was too quiet for a distribution center. Too clean for a regular clinic. The longer he stared, the more he felt the rising tightness in his chest, not from fear, but from the sharp edge of dread. Then Max stopped dead in his tracks and emitted a low growl, head turned toward a thick metal door at the far end of the hallway. Jack froze. Max only growled like that when something wasn't just suspicious, it was dangerous. Jack felt his adrenaline spike, his training kicking in, but beneath that was something deeper, grief already forming in anticipation. He approached the door slowly, flashlight in one hand, the other resting on the grip of his sidearm. The metal was freezing cold. Refrigerated. The type of door used in morgues or medical containment units. He hesitated for a breath, forcing his pulse to slow before pushing it open. What met his eyes stopped him cold. Rows of tiny hospital beds, neatly arranged, each with a sterile 4-pole beside it. The beds were child-sized. The sheets were tucked with military precision. And worse, most of them were still occupied. 3 children. 2 girls and a boy. No older than 6. Each one lying motionless, for lines still connected to their small arms. Eyes closed. No signs of injury, no blood, no bruises, just unnatural stillness. Their skin had the faint pallor of sedation. But they were breathing. Barely. Jack's breath caught. His flashlight wavered. He took a step forward, then another, every movement reluctant as his heart dropped further into his stomach. He had seen bodies. He had seen violence. But this was something else. This was surgical. Controlled. Stripped of humanity. The children looked like they had been processed, like inventory, not human beings. He crouched beside the nearest girl. Her lips were dry. Her arms bruised at the foresight. Jack felt his hands tremble as he gently touched her wrist. A pulse, faint, but steady. Alive. He exhaled shakily, biting back the rage swelling in his chest. Someone had done this. Someone had taken these children, wiped them clean of their names, their comfort, their safety, and locked them in a refrigerated warehouse like spare parts. His stomach twisted. It was trafficking, yes. But it was more than that. This was clinical. It was medical. Industrial. And terrifyingly sophisticated. Max paced quietly near the entrance, still on edge, while Jack moved quickly now, checking each child, confirming signs of life, murmuring reassurances they couldn't hear. "You're safe now. I've got you. I promise." Then something caught his eye, a set of security monitors in the back of the room. Live feeds. One showed the hallway. Another showed him, this very room, from above. He was being watched. Jack froze. His eyes narrowed. Whoever was behind this, whoever had orchestrated this facility, had eyes on him. The blood in his veins ran cold as realization took hold. He wasn't just uncovering a crime scene. He had walked straight into someone's operation. And they knew he was here. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, each beat loud in his ears like the ticking of a countdown. He backed away from the row of hospital beds, his eyes never leaving the glowing security monitors in the corner. There it was, his face, caught in real time, staring back at him from the overhead camera. Somewhere, someone was watching. Not just reviewing footage later, watching now. Live. A chill ran down his spine, and instinctively, he reached for the radio on his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Agent Walker," he whispered, his voice low but firm. "Requesting immediate backup. Possible medical trafficking operation. Children are alive. I repeat, children are alive. Suspect surveillance is active. Possible hostiles still on site." The radio crackled, but no response came. He tried again. "Dispatch, do you copy?" Still nothing. Static. Silence. His jaw tightened. Either the signal was being jammed, or someone had cut communication entirely. Either way, he was on his own. For now. Max let out a sharp bark from behind him, tail stiff, nose to the ground as he paced back and forth near the door. Jack knew that bark, it was urgent. Something, or someone, was coming. He moved fast now, scanning the room for anything that could give him leverage. His eyes landed on a file cabinet next to the monitors. He yanked it open. Inside, rows of manila folders, each tagged with photos, initials, dates. Medical records. Not just of the children in the room, but dozens more. Some files were marked with red stamps that read transferred. Others were blacked out with Sharpie. Jack's fingers trembled as he flipped through them. These weren't just abductions. These were experiments. Harvesting. Something systematic. Anger surged in his chest, hot and blinding. His grip tightened around the folder, crumpling the edges. He had seen corruption before, but this level of depravity was beyond anything he had imagined. And worse, whoever ran this place had resources. Surveillance. Logistics. Medical infrastructure. This wasn't the work of a lone psychopath. It was an enterprise. He turned back to the children, checking again for signs of distress. One of the girls stirred slightly, just a twitch, a flicker of a hand. Jack's breath caught. They were sedated. Drugged. But alive. Still reachable. Still savable. "We're gonna get you out of here," he murmured, crouching beside her. "No matter what it takes." Max barked again, this time louder. Jack bolted upright, gun drawn, flashlight beams slicing through the gloom. Heavy footsteps echoed faintly from the corridor beyond the refrigerated door. Not hurried. Not panicked. Calm. Confident. Like someone who wasn't surprised he was here. Like someone who had planned for it. Jack's blood ran cold. He backed toward the far end of the room, eyes scanning for a secondary exit, every nerve on high alert. His mind raced through scenarios: fight, flight, hold the line. He couldn't leave the children. But he couldn't let himself be taken either. Not when he had what they were trying to hide. His hand reached for the folders again, stuffing as many as he could into his field bag. Evidence. Proof. Even if he didn't make it out, someone had to know the truth. The footsteps grew closer. Then stopped. Silence. Jack raised his weapon, aiming it at the door, finger firm on the trigger. His breath slowed, steady. He wasn't just an agent anymore. He was a witness. A threat. And whoever was behind that door? They were about to find out that Jack Walker didn't back down. The sound of sirens pierced the night like a promise. Red and blue lights washed over the broken windows of the warehouse as black SUVs skidded to a stop outside. Armed agents flooded in, swift and silent, their boots thudding against concrete as they secured the perimeter. Jack stumbled out moments later, half carrying the smallest child in his arms, her body limp but breathing. His face was streaked with sweat, blood, and soot, but his eyes burned with something fierce, relentless purpose, and quiet rage. Behind him, Max followed closely, formatted, ears alert, his job not yet done. Paramedics rushed forward, taking the children from his arms with the utmost care, their voices soft and urgent. Jack stood back, breath ragged, watching as the young victims were wheeled into the light, their futures uncertain, but their lives spared. An agent approached him. "Walker. You good?" Jack nodded slowly. "We got them out. But this is just the surface." He handed over the bag of stolen files, his fingers reluctant to let go. "These people," he said, voice low, cracking just slightly, "they're organized. Funded. And they've been doing this for years. I saw the records. We've only scratched the edge." The agent took the bag and nodded grimly. "Then we dig deeper." Jack turned his gaze back to the warehouse, now lit up with floodlights and swarming with investigators. He clenched his jaw, a storm gathering behind his eyes. This was no longer just a mission. It was a vow. No more children would vanish. Not on his watch.